Hello, everypony. It's Lotus Moon. Alright, I do hope you all enjoyed the previous performance for Inverno in F minor. I also once again apologize for my mood at that point. You all know why. It's still hard, but I will get better. And in hindsight, my mood like that turned out to kind of be a good thing as it tied into the overall feeling of that particular chapter. So, in a good way, I guess it came out pretty well. Anyway, this next part, well, I don't even know how I can describe it. To any of you who might feel a bit squeamish, here is a fair warning. Just keep an open mind. But without further ado, it's time to get into this part. Take your seats. It's time we begin. Inverno in F minor, written by Cracked Inkwell. Chapter 6. The Nightmare Fugue in B minor. That night, after Inverno was put into bed, he went off to sleep with the torture chamber still in his memory. He couldn't help but wonder how his dad could be so just and fair to him, but not to the slaves that once served them. In the dim light of his room, his eyes forcing themselves closed, he finally fell asleep. Crack. Inverno awoke in shock at the sound of somebody screaming. He opened his eyes, but couldn't see anything except darkness.
Who's there?
He called out. All around him, he heard whimpers, heavy sobbing, and a low voice, murmuring pleas of mercy.
Hello?
Inverno was becoming frightened. What was going on? Who was crying? Why couldn't he see anything?
Oh, you're awake.
That voice. He knew that voice.
Papa!
Inverno called out.
Oh, Papa, I'm so glad you're here.
He glanced around in the darkness.
But where are you? I can't see you.
Of course you can't.
He replied. Yet, Inverno noticed that he didn't sound at all like he was pleased to see his son. Rather, he sounded annoyed, disappointed even. Suddenly, he felt a hoof on the back of his head to quickly realize that he was wearing a blindfold. Why was he wearing a blindfold? At first, the unicorn was blinded, but after blinking a few times, he realized, to his horror, where he was. He was back in the vast torture chamber, only instead of the flowers that he saw, it was now cramped with crystal ponies, young and old, stallions and mares, even foals, were clustered around the room. They were either chained to the walls or ceiling, and those who were trapped in the evil devices, their faces contorted in agony and stained with tears. Yet, scarier still, was his father, standing in front of him and holding in one hoof the black blindfold. Sombra was shaking his head and had a look of great disappointment on his face. Inverno looked up only to see that his front hooves were chained to the ceiling. Turning his head down, he saw his hind hooves were shackled to iron balls. He couldn't move even if he tried.
Papa? Papa, what's going on?
His father sighed.
You disappointed me, my son.
Papa?
And here I thought I was raising such a good colt.
He said, turning to a part of the wall which hung the wickedly sharp tools. He picked up a few by his magic, examining one before moving on to the next.
Here I thought I had a son that would one day take over my kingdom, and look what I got.
Papa, what are you doing?
Inverno's voice shook.
You've been very bad.
he said.
First leaving your home without my permission, and now you've spoken with the wicked princess of the south, and I thought you were good this whole time.
Papa, I didn't,
You didn't what?
His father shouted.
You knew the rules since the day you were born, and now you're turning back on me, yo papa?
but it's not my fault.
Inverno fought back the tears in his eyes. Sombra shook his head.
Inverno, son, in all the time that I've had known you almost never break the rules that I've given you. In all that time, I had given you the privilege to forgive you, something that none of these filth have, but look at you. You've taken advantage of it for too long. Sure, I had forgiven you when you've forgotten to feed any of your slaves, or that you've hadn't practiced the organ when you should have had, or the time you snuck out of your home, but this.
He finally chose a long knife with a wicked curved blade that made Inverno's eyes widen.
What you have done is inexcusable.
Papa, please, don't do this.
He begged.
But you have been such a naughty cult.
Please.
And you know perfectly well what happens to cults that break the rules.
No, Papa, don't.
But since I still love you,
His father said, levitating the blindfold back over his eyes.
you get to have the one privilege that none of these pigs get to have.
Papa, no.
Inverno pleaded, tears soaking the blindfold and starting down his cheeks.
At least you won't be able to see what is about to happen.
Papa, don't. I'll be good, please. I'll remember to feed it. I'll practice on the organ, copy more music, write more often, never leave home again. Just please don't hurt me. Papa, don't.
He cried.
Inverno?
This time, a voice called out to him.
Some pony help!
Kid, wake up!
He finally did so with a jolt. He found shining armor there, along with the warm light of morning sun seeping into his room.
Hey, you okay?
The prince asked. Inverno shook his head and told him.
I had a really bad dream.
Must be, you're sweating all over.
Shining pointed out.
Whatever it was, it must have been terrifying.
The young stallion could only nod.
Do you want to talk about it?
Inverno violently shook his head at the suggestion.
That bad, huh? Look, don't worry about it now. You're awake, and since Princess Luna's still here, I'll talk to her. She can make sure you won't get any more nightmares from now on, okay?
The young unicorn didn't say anything.
Come on, you should get up.
The prince sniffed the air.
When was the last time you bathed?
I don't know.
Actually, why don't you go take a bath first, then head down to eat some breakfast with us?
Eat where?
In the dining hall.
Shining answered. He was greeted with only a blank stare.
Oh, that's right. When you're done, I'll have a guard to show you where it is, okay?
I guess so.
Inverno said. After the prince left, the unicorn got out of bed and headed towards the bathroom. As he turned on the water, his thoughts drifted back to the nightmare he'd woken from. He thought,
Must be from the dungeon place. But still, why would Papa do that to me? That wasn't like him. I might have been given a spanking or maybe less food, but that? Why? Was that dream trying to tell me something?
as the water in the shallow tub began to rise, Inverno lowered himself into it, letting the warm water soak in. He picked up a pink bar that, going by the smell, he assumed to be soap.
And even after waking up, why couldn't I feel anything but fear?
And this was Chapter 6 to Inverno in F minor. Wow, every pony. This chapter, this performance. I did warn all of you to keep an open mind if you get squeamish. Shining had a point in the previous chapter, that showing Inverno the torture chamber would possibly scar him for life. So for him to have a nightmare like this only after seeing it, well, that's only to simply happen after that. But to think he would dream of his father torturing him for disobeying him. Sombra may be gone, but the imprint he's left on every pony is still there. And now his son is kind of seeing things from the crystal pony's perspective. To think that he might actually fear his father now is only natural. I feel for him. Every pony, I wanted to let you know as a little reminder, the voice of King Sombra was done by Eighth Flame, and you have to admit he did a really great job at it. Oh, it just sent tingles down your spine. It made you feel like you were actually there with them while it was happening. Unless that's just me, because I kind of have a crush on King Sombra. Don't know why. It just do. But enough about me, every pony. Time for another little break. Chapter 7 is in production, so please be patient. It will be out soon. For right now, feel free to get some refreshments and possibly a snuggle buddy if you need one. I am Lotus Moon, and I do thank you all for your attention and patience during this time. We will be back soon, so please, take your time during this break.